Hello everybody and welcome back to Mastering Avantra. Today's topic is all about our latest major release, Avantra 24. Today I'm going to take you through the major features that are coming with Avantra 24 and give you a sneak peek as to what you can expect. So let's go and dig right into the system. The first thing I'm going to start with is our new add-ins library. Now previously, if you wanted to install an enterprise add-in, so an automation or a custom check, you'd go to our support portal, find the right file you're looking for, download it and put it into your system. Well, there was a few problems with that. Number one, how do you update? Number two, how do you know there's something new? And number three, where do you actually go to find it? So we decided to make this quite a bit easier. So here I am in an Avantra 24 system, and you'll notice our brand new welcome page as well as part of what we're seeing here. And so I'm going to go to the administration menu, and I'm going to go to this new section down here called Add-ins Library. So this communicates based on the license you have installed in your Avantra system. So what you see here shows you what you are able to install in your Avantra system. So you can see here, I can see all the different enterprise add-ins, and there's even more than this. This is just a demo system. All the enterprise add-ins that are available to me today. And you can see here that if I wanted to, for example, install Debian-based OS patching. So if I wanted to patch an Ubuntu system, or if I wanted to get a template to be able to do that, I can just double click, get all the information about it. You can see I'm licensed for this, so I can start to install it. And yeah, you know what? That's the one I want. Let's put it into the system. I can say install add-in and confirm. And just like that, it has installed the add-in into my system. And you can see the list here of everything that it has installed for me to look at. So we've got our workflows, OS patching, apt-get, and then there are some workflow steps as well. And if I wanted to, I could go straight in there, look at the workflow, and do whatever I want to do with it. So that's a much, much easier way to both discover and install your enterprise add-ins. It uses the same communication mechanism as our Avantra license activation. So if you already use auto activation, which most customers do, then this should just work out of the box. If you're using a proxy, it'll use the same proxy as you use for your license activation. So that should be fine as well. If you don't have automated license activation, please do reach out to either support or to your customer success manager, and they'll be more than happy to help you get that set up as well. It really is the easiest way to keep your Avantra system up and running. So that's the add-in library, which is absolutely fantastic, and that is coming with Avantra 24.0.0, and you should be able to start using it immediately. The second thing I want to point out while I'm here is a number of new automation templates. So we've included some new automation templates such as HANA upgrades, client copies, and even more, but there's one in particular I do want to show you, which is really quite cool. So if I come out of the add-ins library and I go to support and into SAP HotNews. Now, we introduced SAP HotNews, it must be a version and a half ago, a major version and a half ago, into Avantra, and it has quickly become one of the favorite features for our customers within the product. And you can see here, my SAP HotNews is constantly synchronizing. You can see stuff has been coming in. I'm recording this on the 30th of November. This came in yesterday or the day before yesterday. And so this is exactly what you would expect. You can open up your HotNews and see which systems it applies to. But there's something new. And so now if we go here, we're looking at a SAP HotNews, and this is the number. If I click on this system, there's a new button over here called Run Workflow to apply selected notes. Now, in a lot of cases, SAP provide digitally signed SAP notes to rectify HotNews issues. And so these are corrections that must be implemented in the system. And the great news is that with Avantra 24, you can now run a workflow right here within SAP HotNews to actually apply the correction to your system. So you can see here, you can select the workflow here, BC implement ABAP corrections, which by the way is a workflow that is available from the add-ins library I just showed you. And so we're constantly keeping that up to date, and you'll be able to install updates to it and make sure you have it installed the first time before you try this, otherwise the button may not appear. You provide some credentials, so perhaps you need specific credentials to be able to apply this. Perhaps your monitoring user doesn't have the ability to apply corrections, but another user does. You provide a transport request, or leave it blank and we'll create one. And we can also do stuff around legacy implementations as well. All you do is hit apply, and off it'll go, run the workflow and apply it in that system. Assuming that's your dev system, you then transport that as you normally do through your landscape, through dev, QA, production, and so on and so on. So this is a really exciting evolution of SAP HotNews support in Avantra 24, and we hope you really enjoy it, and please do send us your feedback. The other thing I didn't mention is that you can actually build your own workflows as well, of the type SAP HotNews. So if I go into automation and workflows, for example, and let's say I was creating a new workflow, I can say, actually, this is an SAP Notes workflow. And if you build your own SAP Notes workflow, you can run it from right there within the SAP HotNews screen, as I was just showing you here. So if I select SAP Notes, you can't see the drop down because of the way I'm recording, but if I set the type to be SAP Notes, you will immediately be able to run this workflow that you are creating from the SAP HotNews screen. So if you need additional validation, if you need additional reporting coming out of the implementation of the SAP Note, you can do that yourself, no problem whatsoever. So that's one of the many automation templates that are being released with Avantra 24. Really encourage you to check out our release notes to see the full list of everything that's coming with the automation templates. The next one I want to talk about is source code management. We have seen some absolutely wonderful uses of Avantra within our customer base in ways we never anticipated. And we can see customers who are producing thousands of lines of no-code, low-code, and even pro-code for their Avantra systems, whether that be workflows, checks, or whatever the case may be. The amount of custom content and extension content that's being created is really quite humbling. And we've provided the best development environment we can within a web-based platform like Avantra. But we always get requests, hey, can I use my favorite development environment? Can I use VS Code? Can I use VI for those of you who are insane? Kidding. But we always get those requests. And so one of the things we've been considering for a while is adopting more standard mechanisms for that source code control. And so we've introduced that with Avantra 24. So if I go to administration, there's a new area called repositories. And if I go into repositories, you can see here that I have set up a Git repository. In this case on Bitbucket, but you can use GitLab, you can use GitHub, you can use any Git implementation that you happen to use internally. And it's really quite easy to set up. So once you come in here, you can configure the repository. And you can see here that I have a URL. I've provided some credentials, which I provided elsewhere. So this is, I think I'm using basic authentication, but you can use project authentication or whatever you need to use. You can subscribe to specific branches. And then once you've defined a repository, you can then say this namespace. So in this case, I have one here called Ava Git test. I can link a namespace to a repository. What does this mean? It means that if I create a workflow in that namespace, if I create a step in that namespace, the code I create and the structure I create is automatically synced to this Git repository. There are so many benefits to this. Number one, you get complete source code management, which is always a good thing. Who changed what, where? I love the blame view that Git provides, which is fantastic. But you also get the ability to synchronize this to multiple Avantra servers. So if you have a development system and a production system, you can synchronize those two things. You don't need to back up or make a note to back up your code separately from your Avantra system. It is all now kept centrally in your repositories. And so this is a fantastic evolution of the development environment here within Avantra. So it's really quite easy. If you want to configure something new, you just go to repositories, new, and fill in the details as I showed you earlier. For the credentials that I mentioned, you're going to want to put them under configuration, integrations, and credentials. That's where these exist. So you can create a credential of whatever type you need. So it can be SSH, it could be basic auth, it could be OAuth, it could be whatever you need it to be. So you can create your credentials as you require, put them here, and then apply them to your repositories. So that really is quite exciting, and that's the Git integration and the enterprise source code integration for Avantra. The next one I want to briefly talk about is the automation engine. Now, we've been making huge strides with the automation engine over the past 4 years as we've been introducing it. And Avantra 24 is no different. So with Avantra 24, you now get the ability to do parallel loops. You can now deploy a single automation to thousands of servers. And even, I was talking with Bernd Engest, our CTO, yesterday, and he said if you deploy to 3,000 systems and automation, and 3 of those fail, it's now really easy in the UI to come in and say, okay, I've had 3 failures, let me just deal with those 3 while the rest of them continue on. So that's a big adjustment to the automation engine as well. You'll also have noticed, and we briefly touched on this earlier, if I go in to create a new workflow, there's this new type. Now, you can't see the drop down, but I'll pop through them here. If you want to create your own custom method for achieving one of our built-in automations, like starting an SAP system, stopping a database, the SAP Notes one that we talked about earlier, starting a business object system, restarting an SAP system, if you have, or even a server for that matter, if you custom steps that you want to go through, let's say before you stop the system, you want to shut down a couple of services on the system, you can now do that, build a workflow of the type start or stop server, and then when you're executing your start or stop, you can choose your own custom workflow. This is a big evolution for us because it means that you have the control and the ability to extend our standard operations to match your requirements. And while it might not sound that big a deal, when you start to think about all the custom things you might want to do before you shut a system down or start a system up, it becomes immensely powerful. So that's another enhancement to the workflow engine, which is really quite cool. And the next thing I want to talk about, and I mentioned it at the start, is our updated UI. As most of you know, we're on a multi-year journey to improve the overall user experience of Avantra and to bring it into the latest and greatest technology sets. With Avantra 24, we've made 2 major changes. The first, you can probably already see. For any of you spending time in an Avantra system, this looks a little bit different. It's updated, it's much faster, it's much slicker, and we have a slightly different color scheme as well. So you can start to see some of those taking effect as you browse through the Avantra system. So this one's really quite cool. The other thing we've done is if you go to monitoring and dashboards new, we're now starting to bring some of our new GraphQL based UIs, and that just means it's using slightly more modern techniques as to how we interact with it. We're now bringing them right into the middle of the UI that you're currently using. So here and there, you'll start to see buttons appearing saying, hey, try this in the new UI. Or like you just saw with me there, I was able to browse to dashboards in the new UI rather than the legacy. And you can start to use some of our updated and new methods of creating dashboards, which are really, really fantastic and exactly what customers expect. So for example, you can now, as you can see with me, I am hovering over graphs to be able to see what's happening and getting a lot more insight into how it's all working. We've also introduced a large number of new dashlets. So if I click here, add dashlet, you can see all the different types you can start to add. And this really is becoming a very rich reporting layer that you can use within your own environment. And from everything from kick off a workflow to the charts that I was talking about earlier. There really is a lot to play with here. And as always, play with it, please. Give us your feedback. We'd love to hear more about it. So that's the new UI, and that's a sneak peek into some of the stuff you can expect to see as you browse around Avantra. The final thing I want to mention are some under the hood updates. I mentioned GraphQL earlier. So GraphQL is a REST-based API protocol. And so you can now use that yourselves. It is fully documented under docs.avantra.com. And it is a fantastic way of bringing Avantra data into your third-party systems. You have a third-party dashboard, or you want to trigger automations in Avantra from a third-party system. You can now do that using our GraphQL API. It's really easy to use. I was playing with it yesterday. You can just put our GraphQL endpoint into Postman, for example, and it'll show you all the different functions and variables that you need to provide in order to interact with GraphQL. You can check out our Mastering Avantra playlist, where we'll be doing a much more in-depth view on how to use our GraphQL API. And please do check that out and give us feedback if you have any questions, as always. And the final thing I wanted to mention, with Avantra 23.3, we started our move to Java 17. So up until now, Avantra has been supporting Java 8. And Java 8 is fully supported until 2026, security updates, the whole lot. It's an LTS, or a long-term support version, but we don't want to wait until the last minute to start switching this over. And with Avantra 24, we've made the next leap. So the current used LTS version of Java is Java 17. Java 21 has been released as an LTS, but that was only last month. So, that'll be a couple of years down the line for us again. We don't need to move super fast on this stuff. But Java 17 is where we are moving to now for the support. So with 23.3, we brought Java 17 support to the agents. So you can see here, I'm using Java 17.0.8. And this was really easy, and we've comprehensive documentation on how to upgrade your agent, then upgrade your Java, and then upgrade your agent further. So please do check that out. And please do note, for your agents, that is a two-step process. If you're running an agent on 23.0, let's say, that's running Java 8, you need to bring it to 23.3, upgrade your Java, and then bring that agent up to Avantra 24. The Avantra 24 agent only supports Java 17. That's a key thing to remember. But also with Avantra 24, the Avantra server runs on Java 17. So if I go to my Java virtual machine here, you can see here I'm using Java 17 as the runtime environment on the server. So this is really easy, much easier than the agent for the upgrade. So as you're about to do your upgrade, you're bringing down the server, installing Java 17, make sure it's the default Java, or put it in a specific location and point to it, we don't mind. Then when you're installing Avantra, if it's the standard Java, it'll just pick it up and off it goes. If you're pointing to a specific one, there are flags during your installation. You can do --JVM equals, and you can start to point to a specific Java 17 JVM. But that was one of the big updates that we made as well under the hood to really ensure the security, ensure the robustness, and just making sure that we're keeping up to date from the Java side of things as well. So there we go. That was a whistle-stop tour of Avantra 24 and some of those cool new features that we're bringing to you right now. So just to recap, we started with the add-ins library, and so this works through the same mechanism that your license activation works through. So you should be seeing some really cool list of stuff that you can start to import with those single-click imports and start to extend and to play with. We talked about our new automation templates. So we've got those templates to implement a digitally signed SAP notes right from the HotNews screen. You've got SAP HANA upgrades, you've got client copies, and so much more. So please do check that out. We talked about enterprise source code management, and that's our Git integration, where you can link it to a Bitbucket, a GitHub, or GitLab, or wherever there's Git, you can integrate it. And all those code changes on your workflows and your steps, they're going to be synchronized right up there. We talked about the updates to the automation engine, those loops, and the real ability to deploy to thousands upon thousands of systems at the same time. Fantastic stuff. We saw our new UI, our updated UI, and some of those new dashboards and dashlets that you can start to play with. And then finally, under the hood, we've got our GraphQL API for interacting with Avantra. And of course, we've made that move to Java 17 as well. So that's Avantra 24 in a nutshell. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do check out the rest of the Mastering Avantra series, where you'll start to see some more videos popping up over the next few weeks on these new features in much more detail. But for now, from me, thanks very much for watching.